CreepyCorner stories.
Hey everyone, welcome back to CreepyCorner stories. You know, diving into the dark web is always risky, but sharing these stories with you makes it worth it. I'm curious, where are you watching this from right now? Let me know in the comments below. I've noticed that these kinds of stories hit differently depending on where you are. It might even make the experience a little creepier. So, tell me, are you watching from the safety of your home or somewhere less secure? I found a dark web job working as a Disney costume cast member. This is the nightmare that happened on my last day of work. I don't even know how to start this without sounding like a complete idiot. Maybe I was an idiot. Maybe I still am. But the truth is, when you're desperate enough, your brain will justify anything, even the things you know are bad ideas, even the things that, deep down, your gut is screaming at you to run away from. I guess I should back up. My life was falling apart. Like, not even in the, ugh, I'm so broke, I have to skip Starbucks way. Completely, irreversibly, dangerously falling apart. I was 3 months behind on rent. My car had been repossessed. My credit score was so low, it looked like a Wi-Fi password. And to top it off, my job barely covered food, let alone the mountain of debt crushing me every second of the day. It got to a point where I started looking for any way to make money. You know that point where your brain kind of stops caring about the how and just focuses on getting through the week? That was me. And that's how I ended up on a forum I had no business being on. I wasn't even trying to get on the dark web. I swear. It was just one of those sketchy freelancer sites where people posted about under-the-table jobs. Some of it was normal, stuff like house sitting or cleaning gigs. But there were also really weird postings. Need someone to babysit my wife while I'm gone. Must be comfortable with restraints. I will pay someone $10,000 to let me chase them through the woods for 24 hours. Looking for a personal assistant to help with my private experiments. NDA required. Like I said, weird. But at the time, I was too numb to care. Then one listing caught my eye. $5,000 for 1 week of work. No experience needed. Disney theme park. Now, I'm not stupid. I know nothing legit pays that much for no experience. But something about the post got to me. Maybe it was the fact that it mentioned Disney, a huge mainstream company. It made it feel safer. Like, yeah, the money was sketchy, but what were they gonna do? Dress me as Goofy and have me sell drugs? So, against every survival instinct, I sent an email, and that's when shit got weird. The first email, a response came in minutes. Thank you for your interest. This job requires absolute discretion and professionalism. You will be working as a costume character at a private event inside the park. If you accept, you will receive further instructions. Respond with your full name and availability. Okay, still vague, but at least it wasn't asking me for my social security number or bank details. I debated for a while. Something about it felt off. But again, $5,000. You ever been so broke that money stops feeling real? That's where I was. I responded. The contract. The second email arrived even faster than the first. You have been selected. Report to the employee entrance at redacted on date. You will be provided with your costume upon arrival. Do not be late. That was it. No paperwork, no interview, no NDA. Just a time, a place, and a direct order. I don't know why, but something about it made my stomach turn. It was too clinical, too impersonal, like they didn't see me as a person, just a tool. But at that point, I didn't care. I needed the money. So I set an alarm for midnight, put on my least wrinkled clothes, and went to Disney. The employee entrance. If you've ever been to Disney as a regular guest, you know how magical it is. The bright lights, the music, the carefully crafted illusion that nothing bad can ever happen there. But the backstage area? It's the exact opposite. I arrived at the employee entrance at 11:59 p.m. There were no crowds, no music, no colors, just a row of industrial buildings, dimly lit by flickering streetlights. It was like stepping behind the curtain of a magic trick and realizing everything was fake. I was met by a man in a plain black uniform. No name tag, no Disney branding, just a clipboard and an expression so blank it almost didn't seem human. "You're late," he said. "No, I pulled out my phone. Midnight, on the dot. He didn't even acknowledge it. He just turned and started walking. I followed. He led me through a metal door, down a concrete hallway, and into the utilidors, Disney's underground tunnel system. If you don't know, the utilidors are real. They're a network of secret tunnels beneath the park that allow employees to move around without being seen. I expected other workers, maybe some cast members, getting off their shifts, but the tunnels were empty, completely. The only sound was the faint hum of fluorescent lights. I don't know why, but that hum bothered me. It was wrong. Too deep. Too low. Like something was vibrating inside my skull. "Through here." The man in black stopped at a metal door and pulled it open. Inside was a single costume hanging from a hook, and that's when I felt it, the first real twinge of fear, because the costume wasn't one of the clean, friendly Disney suits you see in the park. It was old. The fabric was stained, the head was too big, the eyes were too wide, the smile was too sharp, and worst of all, it smelled, not like sweat or dirt, not like something that had been worn too many times without washing. It smelled like rotten fabric and something else I couldn't place, something faintly metallic. "You'll be playing Mickey tonight," the man said. I swallowed. What exactly am I doing?" His face didn't change. "You're entertaining special guests." I don't know why, but the way he said that made my skin crawl. I should have left right then. I should have walked away, gone home, and figured out another way to pay rent. But instead, I stepped forward, and I put on the suit. Final thought, the second the Mickey head slid over mine, I felt it. A pressure, like something was already inside the suit with me. And then, from somewhere deep in the tunnels, I heard it. A scream. Not a playful theme park scream. A real one. And it was coming from behind a locked door, marked "Authorized Personnel Only." The scream didn't sound like it belonged in this world. It wasn't the kind of scream you hear at a haunted house or on a roller coaster. It was raw, feral, animalistic. The sound of a person being torn apart piece by piece, knowing they wouldn't survive, knowing their death wasn't going to be quick or merciful. And it was coming from inside the tunnels with me. I went rigid inside the Mickey costume, my breath hot and suffocating against the thick, musty fabric. The pressure inside the suit, like something pressing against my skin, was getting stronger. I turned to the man in black. "What was that?" His expression didn't change, didn't even flicker. "Get to your post." I didn't move. That scream had come from directly behind the metal door, marked "Authorized Personnel Only." My body was telling me to run, but my brain was screaming, "Don't turn your back on the door." The man in black sighed, as if I was an inconvenience. Then he grabbed my wrist. "Move!" I didn't even get a chance to resist. His grip was unnatural. Ice-cold fingers dug into my skin, his grip more like steel cables than flesh and bone. He yanked me down the tunnel, forcing me forward, and as we walked away, I swear to God, the door rattled, like something inside was trying to get out the underground park. After what felt like an eternity of walking, the tunnel opened into a massive underground room, and my stomach dropped. It was an exact replica of Main Street, USA, but something was horribly, fundamentally wrong. It looked half-finished. The buildings had facades, but no depth. Their windows were just painted on. Their doors didn't open. The street itself was too smooth, like the entire thing was a movie set, rather than an actual theme park. Even the lampposts were wrong, slightly tilted, casting eerie, elongated shadows that stretched across the empty street like grasping fingers. There was no sky above, just a ceiling covered in massive, low-hanging black tops, the material slightly moving, like something was crawling beneath them, and the air, God, the air. It was thick, humid, carrying a sickly sweet chemical stench that burned my nostrils. Then I saw them, the guests. At first, I thought they were just rich people who had paid for some ultra-exclusive after-hours event. But as I looked closer, I realized something was very, very wrong. They were dressed like normal park guests. Mickey ears, Disney merch, bright touristy outfits. But their movements were all off. Their heads ticked to the side every few seconds, like a glitching video. Their mouths were stretched into frozen smiles, too wide, too unnatural. Their eyes, God, their eyes. They were black, not dark brown, not shadowed, completely, inhumanly black, like holes punched through their faces, and every single one of them was staring directly at me. A wave of ice-cold terror crawled up my spine. I turned to the man in black, my voice coming out hoarse. "Who are they?" His expression remained blank. Smile. Wave. I felt my body stiffen. "What?" "You're Mickey Mouse. Entertain them." I turned back to the crowd. They hadn't moved. They were still frozen in place, still staring. Then, in perfect unison, every single one of their heads snapped to the left, like marionettes on invisible strings. I felt something break inside me, but the man in black's grip tightened around my wrist. "Wave." I had no choice, so I lifted one gloved hand and gave a slow, shaky wave. And the moment I did, they moved, not like normal people, not walking, not running, gliding. Their bodies didn't move at all. Their feet stayed flat on the ground. Their arms remained locked at their sides, but they still slid forward at an unnatural speed, like gravity didn't apply to them. My breath hitched in my throat. Then, from somewhere deep in the crowd, I heard it. A giggle, but it wasn't normal. It was slow, distorted, like a child's laugh played backward at half speed, and it was getting closer. The first interaction, I wanted to run. Every part of my body was screaming to rip off the Mickey head and bolt, but I couldn't, because I realized something horrifying. My hands, I couldn't feel them anymore. I tried flexing my fingers, but it was like they weren't there. Like the second I put on the costume, my body had started losing pieces of itself. I turned to the man in black, my voice cracking. Something's wrong with the suit. Stay in character. Before I could say another word, one of the guests was in front of me. A woman, mid-30s, dressed in a bright pink Minnie Mouse sweatshirt. Her smile was too wide. Her black hole eyes never blinked, and she reached up, her fingers too long, her nails too sharp, and grabbed my wrist. I nearly screamed. Her skin was ice cold, but her grip was searing, like holding dry ice. The pain shot through my arm, making my vision blur. I tried to yank away, but she wouldn't let go. Then she spoke, but her lips didn't move. The words just appeared, inside my head. "Let us in." My heartbeat stopped. She squeezed harder. "Let us in. Let us in. Let us in." My vision darkened at the edges. Something was pouring from her fingers into my skin, a sensation so wrong I thought I would vomit. Then I ripped free. I stumbled backward, gasping, clutching my wrist, and she just stood there, grinning, staring, waiting. I turned to the man in black, panting. I'm done. I can't." But he was gone. I was alone, surrounded by things that weren't human. And then the lights above me flickered and went out, and the entire crowd let out a single, deafening, static-laced scream, like 1,000 voices layered over each other at once. And in the dark, I felt hands, too many hands, grabbing, pulling, and something forced its way inside my mind. The lights died, and the moment they did, the entire crowd of things let out a single, deafening, distorted scream. Not human, not even close. It was like 1,000 voices layered over each other, all playing at different speeds, all clawing at my brain like a nest of shrieking rats. The sound vibrated inside my skull, sinking into my teeth, rattling the bones beneath my skin. Then the hands came. Too many hands. Thin, needle-fingered, unnatural hands, grabbing, yanking, clawing at the suit. The nails tore into the fabric of Mickey's gloves, into the arms of the costume, and oh God, I could feel it, like they were tearing into my actual skin. I screamed, thrashed, tried to rip myself free, but they held on. Their fingers slid beneath the Mickey suit, like slimy insects burrowing into flesh. They dug deep, sinking into me, the touch burning, like their very existence was an infection that my body couldn't fight off. They were getting inside, and I realized, with a kind of distant, soul-crushing horror, that the suit was starting to fuse with me. The moment I thought it, the pain exploded, like hooks buried inside my veins, pulling in different directions, like something was trying to pull me apart and stitch me back together all at once. My spine arched, my fingers twitched, and my head snapped back so hard I thought my neck would break. And suddenly, the lights came back on, just as quickly as they'd gone out, and in that instant, the hands vanished. The crowd? Gone. Every single one of them. I stood in the middle of that half-finished underground main street, gasping for breath, my body on fire, my veins feeling wrong, like they'd been stretched and filled with something thicker than blood. And then I noticed the new sensation. Something was moving inside the suit, inside me. I froze. I could feel it shifted beneath the fabric. Something that wasn't me. Something squirming, pressing against my ribs, against my arms, like it was trying to get comfortable inside my skin. I reached up with trembling fingers, gripping Mickey's head, yanking. It didn't budge. My stomach twisted. I yanked harder, pulling at the fabric around the neck, but it was stuck, fused. The suit wasn't a costume anymore. It was part of me. I was Mickey now. And then, from somewhere deep within the tunnels, I heard music, a slow, warped, broken version of Disney's parade theme, and then came the footsteps. The parade begins. The music started distantly, like an old radio flickering on in another room, but it was wrong. Every note was slightly off-key. The instruments sounded distorted, like they'd been recorded underwater. The song was slower than it should have been, like it was dragging itself forward note by note. And with it came the footsteps, heavy, synchronized, marching closer. I turned my head, my heartbeat thundering in my ears, and I saw them. A parade, but not the kind you'd ever see in the parks. They were dressed like Disney characters, but the suits were filthy, wrong, rotting. Mickey, Minnie, Donald, Goofy, Pluto. Each one of them twisted, mutated, their bodies too long, their limbs unnatural, their costumes moving like real flesh instead of fabric. And their heads, God, their heads. They weren't masks, they were part of them, like they'd been born this way, like something had forced them to become the characters. Their eyes, hollow pits of endless black, were locked on me, and in perfect, unnatural unison, they raised their hands and waved, just like I had. Then Mickey, the other Mickey, stepped forward. He was identical to me, same suit, same oversized head, but his smile was wider. His gloves were soaked in something dark, and as he tilted his head, the fabric around his face shifted, like something was squirming underneath it. Then he reached out a hand, and I felt something inside me twist, like I knew what he wanted. I knew what this parade was for. It was a welcoming ceremony. For me, I wasn't just wearing the Mickey costume, I was becoming Mickey. I staggered back, but my legs didn't move properly. My feet slid instead of stepping, like I was starting to move the way the guests had. Mickey tilted his head again, like he was studying me, waiting. The music grew louder, the distorted notes hammering against my skull. The other costume things were closing in, their empty black eyes wide, grinning, waiting. And then I felt it. My face started splitting apart. The sensation was slow, wet, wrong, like something was peeling me open from the inside. I reached up with trembling fingers, and I felt the smile stretching wider. Not the suit's smile, my smile. And somewhere deep inside me, something laughed. Not in my head, inside my chest, like something had finally crawled all the way in. And then, everything went black. I don't know how long I was gone. It wasn't sleep. It wasn't unconsciousness. It was something else. Like my mind had been dragged somewhere else. Someplace where time didn't exist. Where I was just floating in darkness. Where something was pulling me apart and putting me back together over and over again. I wasn't just inside the suit anymore. The suit was inside me. I felt the fabric pressing into my skin, sinking deeper, like it was fusing with my flesh. My fingers were numb, but at the same time, I could feel everything, every thread of the costume, every inch of the oversized gloves, every ripple of movement inside the Mickey head that was no longer just a mask. And then somewhere in the blackness, something spoke. "You're almost ready." The voice was wrong. Not deep, not high-pitched, not even human. It was static, like a distorted audio file, constantly shifting, playing over itself, backward and forward at the same time. I tried to speak, but I didn't have a mouth anymore. I tried to move, but I didn't have a body anymore. I was nowhere, and I was everywhere. Then, a hand touched my shoulder, and just like that, I was back. The rehearsal. My eyes snapped open. But it wasn't me who opened them. I was standing in front of a mirror, a massive, full-body mirror, stretching from floor to ceiling. The edges faded into darkness. The reflection staring back at me was Mickey Mouse. But it wasn't me. The Mickey in the mirror moved slightly before I did, like it was leading me, teaching me. Its black, button eyes twitched. The oversized white gloves flexed. The giant fabric smile widened just a little too much, and then it raised a hand and waved at me. I didn't want to move. I tried to fight it, but my arm lifted on its own, perfectly mimicking the Mickey in the mirror. I wanted to scream, but I didn't have a mouth anymore. I wasn't controlling my body. The Mickey in the mirror tilted its head. Then it took a step forward, and I did too. Step, step, step. Our movements were identical, but I wasn't the one making them. My body was just following orders, a marionette on invisible strings. Then, the reflection stopped, and I didn't. I took another step, and suddenly, the mirror. Mickey wasn't mirroring me anymore. It was watching me, like it had finally let go of the strings, like it was waiting to see what I would do next. And then, it spoke, but not out loud, inside my head. "It's your turn now." And with that, the mirror shattered. The parade route. I blinked. The mirror was gone. I was no longer in the dark room. I was standing in the underground main street again. But this time, it was finished. The buildings were real now. The windows had depth. The doors could open. The streets were slick with rain, reflecting the glow of gas lanterns that hadn't been there before. The air smelled different, not like damp concrete, but like fresh popcorn, old fabric, something sweet and rotting underneath it all. And the guests were back, rows and rows of them, lining the sidewalks, waiting, smiling, watching, and the parade had already started. The Mickey beside me stepped forward, the one from the mirror, the one that had been controlling me. Now he was real, standing next to me, identical to me in every way. And he reached out, took my hand, and we began walking down the parade route together. The music was louder now, a twisted, warped, glitching version of the Disney parade theme, playing on loop, growing more distorted with every cycle. The other costume characters marched behind us. The Minnie, her head slightly tilted, her fabric smile ripped at the edges. The Donald, his beak cracked open, revealing rows of human teeth inside. The Goofy, his eyes too deep, his limbs too long, his fingers curling like centipede legs as he walked. I couldn't control my body. I was just marching forward, hand in hand with Mickey, my footsteps in perfect sync with the other characters behind me. And the guests, they started cheering. Their voices weren't human anymore, just high-pitched static, a chorus of garbled voices speaking all at once, words I couldn't understand. The floats rolled past us, except they weren't floats anymore. They were cages. Inside each one, something was moving, something twitching, shaking, slamming against the bars, clawing at the air. They were people. I could see their eyes, wild with panic, mouths stretched open in silent screams. Some of them had already started changing. Their skin was peeling like fabric, their faces stretching into something else, their arms bending the wrong way, their bodies fusing with the costumes they'd been forced into. And I understood. They were the ones who had come before me. They had taken the same job, put on the same suits, marched in the same parade, and now they could never leave. I was becoming one of them, and no one above ground would ever know I existed. The music reached its peak. The parade kept moving. The guests kept screaming. and as I lifted my hand to wave again, something inside my head snapped in half, and I finally started laughing too. I was laughing. I didn't want to be, but my mouth wouldn't stop stretching, my lungs wouldn't stop heaving, my body wouldn't stop shaking with laughter that wasn't mine. It was Mickey's, and now Mickey was me. The parade kept moving, step after perfectly synchronized step. The music kept looping, each repetition more warped than the last, each note drilling deeper into my skull like a needle being threaded through my brain. I tried to fight it. I tried to break away, to stop marching, to stop waving, to stop smiling, but my body wasn't mine anymore. The suit wasn't a suit. It was my skin now. The giant fabric gloves, my hands, the oversized cartoon feet, my feet, the head, not a mask, not anymore. I was a part of the parade now, and the crowds of things watching us knew it. They started reaching for me, their long twitching fingers brushing against my arms, their black, bottomless eyes blinking in unison, their grins stretching wider than humanly possible. Their mouths were moving, but their voices were inside my head now. You belong to us. You are one of us. Mickey never leaves. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the suit off my body, rip my skin apart if I had to, just to get out. But my body just kept marching, kept smiling, kept waving, and then the floats stopped moving. The music cut out. Everything went silent. And I saw the castle. The castle. It wasn't Cinderella's castle. Not really. It looked like it. From a distance, at least. But now that I was closer, I could see that the walls weren't brick. They were stitched fabric, the seams pulsing slightly, as if the entire structure was breathing. The spires were bent, leaning inward, the tips curling toward each other like clawed fingers. The drawbridge was open, and standing at the entrance was Mickey, not the one marching beside me, not the one in the mirror, not the one I was becoming. This Mickey was tall, too tall, at least 10 feet, maybe more. His costume was old, the colors faded and torn, the buttons rusted, the fabric rippling like it was full of crawling things. And his eyes were just holes, not black fabric, not cartoon dots, just gaping, empty pits, stretching so deep they looked endless. And in those holes, something was moving, something that looked like hands, hundreds and hundreds of tiny writhing hands, reaching outward, grabbing at nothing, clawing at the edges of the void. And then he opened his mouth, and I saw where the parade ends, the mouth inside Mickey's mouth. There was no tongue, no teeth, no throat, just a tunnel, a long, endless tunnel, stretching forward like a gaping black hole, the edges twitching, the interior moving like something was crawling just beneath the surface. The second I saw it, every nerve in my body caught fire. This was it. This was where the parade ended. This was where the new Mickeys went, where I was about to go. The crowd started cheering. Their static-filled voices crashed into me, screaming words I didn't understand, words that rattled in my brain, words that felt like they were rewriting me. And my feet kept marching forward. Step, step, step. The tall Mickey's mouth stretched wider. The tunnel expanded, the edges splitting, splintering, opening into something deeper, something wrong, something that wasn't supposed to exist. And I stepped onto the drawbridge. I was seconds from entering the mouth, seconds from disappearing forever, seconds from becoming whatever lived inside that suit, inside that parade, inside the tunnels where Mickey's never left. And then I heard the door, the escape. It was so faint, I almost didn't notice it. A tiny metallic click, a door creaking open somewhere deep in the tunnels, and in that instant, the Mickey beside me let go of my hand. The Mickey leading the parade stopped marching. The Mickey waiting in the castle's mouth snapped his pit-black eyes toward the sound. And the crowds of guests, they all turned in unison toward the exit. It was open, a simple metal door standing at the far end of the tunnel, a door that shouldn't have been there, a door that wasn't part of the parade. And I ran. I don't know how I broke free. 1 second, I was being pulled into the castle's mouth. The next, I was sprinting toward the exit, feet slamming against the pavement, arms pumping, my breath coming in ragged gasps inside the Mickey head that still wouldn't come off. And behind me, the parade broke apart. The guests screamed in static voices. The costume characters lurched after me, their limbs stretching, their bodies twisting, their black, empty eyes locked onto me. And the tall Mickey at the castle's entrance, he roared. The sound was inhuman, earth-shaking, a voice that didn't belong in this world. And I felt the suit tightening around me. It didn't want me to leave, but I was almost there. My fingers hit the door, my body slammed into the cold metal, and then I was falling, back to reality. I hit the ground hard, concrete, not pavement, not fabric, real, cold, solid concrete. I gasped for air, my fingers scraping at my face, yanking at the Mickey head. And this time, it came off. I was lying in the middle of an empty Disney employee parking lot. It was morning. The sun was blinding, and I was alone. No underground Main Street, no parade, no crowds, just the costume, still on my body, still clinging to my skin, the fabric damp and heavy with something dark. And then my phone buzzed, a single text from an unknown number. Thank you for your service. Do not return. And the worst part, the $5,000 had already been deposited in my bank account. Epilogue. That was 3 weeks ago. I'm not the same anymore. My hands still feel too big. My face still feels stretched. And at night, when I close my eyes, I still hear the parade music. And I know, one day, it's going to start playing again. And when it does, I won't be able to stop myself from marching. I bought myself a real brother from the dark web. No one's allowed to look at him when he eats. I just figured out the horrifying reason why. Alright, I don't even know where to start. I keep telling myself, this is a dream, that I'll wake up and things will go back to normal. But I can't sleep. I can't eat. Every time I close my eyes, I see him, sitting there, smiling, watching me. And I know that if I mess up, if I slip just once, I won't be here to write the rest of this. So I need to get this out. If you're reading this, don't do what I did. Don't go looking, because some things should never be invited in. It started as a joke. I spend way too much time on the internet. That's not an exaggeration. It's just the truth. I work in IT, which means I'm always either fixing broken code, sitting in front of a screen, or getting screamed at by people who think, "Have you tried turning it off and on again?" is an insult to their intelligence. It also means I know my way around the deep web. Now, I'm not talking about the dumb, edgy stuff teenagers post about. Hiring hitmen, buying drugs, ordering a haunted doll to your house. That stuff is clickbait garbage, and half of it is probably just the FBI waiting for some idiot to actually send them the Bitcoin. But the real deep web, it's different. It's quiet. No flashing ads, no usernames, No timestamps, just people. And sometimes, if you know where to look, you find places you were never meant to find. That's how I ended up on that forum. It didn't have a name, just a string of numbers in the URL. The threads were cryptic, short, written in ways that didn't make sense unless you already knew what you were looking for. Most of them were nonsense. But then, one caught my eye. By a family member, fully trained, lifetime companionship, no refunds. I actually laughed when I saw it. The post had this grainy, low-resolution image attached. Just a silhouette of a person standing in a dark hallway. No details, no face. The comments were just as weird. I love mine. Haven't seen my neighbors since he arrived. Make sure you follow the rules. Trust me. They found out I was writing this. I have to go. It was probably some elaborate ARG, right? One of those creepy internet mysteries designed to suck people in. But I was bored, and I wanted to see how deep the rabbit hole went. I clicked the link. The order page. The website was simple. Black background, red text. No logo, no pop-ups. Just a single message at the top. Pick your brother. Customize below. Below that were drop-down menus. Age, 10 to 50. Personality, obedient, playful, protective, silent dietary needs, standard, strict, other. That last one should have been my first red flag. I kept clicking through, just to see what would happen. There was no price listed, just a final box that said, delivery address. I stared at the screen. This was the point where a normal person would stop. Maybe close the tab, clear their history, and move on. But here's the thing about people like me, people who spend too much time online. Curiosity is a disease. Once something gets into your head, it doesn't let go. So, like an idiot, I typed in my address. Nothing happened. No confirmation email, no receipt. Just a blank screen with one final message. He will arrive in 3 to 5 days. Do not break the rules. I remember actually laughing out loud. That was it? No sketchy credit card form? No weird captcha puzzle? I figured I'd either get some dumb spam email, or at best, a weird little mystery package in the mail. I wasn't scared. I should have been. 3 days later, he arrived. It was a Tuesday night. I'd just gotten home from work. Nothing unusual. I stopped by Starbucks on the way back, grabbed one of those stupidly overpriced cold brews, and spent the whole walk back scrolling through Twitter. And then I saw my front door. It was open. I stopped in my tracks. I live alone. I always double-check my locks. My brain immediately started going through possibilities. Did I get robbed? Did I forget to lock it? Was someone still inside? I didn't even have a weapon. My heart started pounding, and I was about to call the cops when I stepped inside, and he was sitting on my couch. A boy, maybe 18, 19, short brown hair, pale skin, hands folded neatly in his lap. He was just sitting there, waiting. I dropped my coffee. He turned his head toward me, completely calm. His expression didn't change, didn't flicker, didn't show even a hint of emotion. "Who the hell are you?" I choked out. He stood up slowly. "I'm your brother." My stomach dropped. I felt something deeply wrong, slither into my gut like ice water. This wasn't real. This was some kind of elaborate prank, some sick joke. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation, but the longer I stood there, staring at him, the less sense anything made. His voice was too steady, his posture too perfect, and his eyes, they weren't blank, they weren't confused or scared. They were expecting me, like he'd been waiting for this moment. I took a slow step back toward the door, heart hammering in my chest. I don't know who you are, but you need to get the hell out of my house. He didn't move. He just watched me. And then, finally, he spoke again. You ordered me, he said, tilting his head slightly. I'm here now. The rules. That's when I saw the box on my kitchen table. A small, unmarked cardboard package. No shipping label, no return address. And on the top, in thick black ink, was a single word. Rules. My hands were shaking as I stepped toward it. I don't know why, but some part of me knew that once I opened that box, everything would change. I lifted the lid. Inside was a single sheet of paper, neatly folded. I unfolded it, and that's when I realized just how badly I'd screwed up. Rules for your brother. Do not let him leave the house. Ever. He does not need to sleep, but if you hear him whispering at night, do not respond. He will not eat in front of you. Do not attempt to watch him eat. Do not ask him what he eats. If he knocks on your bedroom door between 2:13 a.m. and 2:17 a.m., do not open it. If you wake up to him watching you sleep, pretend you are still asleep. Do not let him see you write these rules down. My hands went ice cold. I slowly lifted my eyes. He was still standing there, smiling. And in that moment, I knew two things with absolute certainty. This wasn't a joke. I was no longer alone in my own home. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stood there, gripping that piece of paper in my trembling hands, rereading the rules over and over like my life depended on it. Because deep down, I knew it did. The air in the room felt wrong, thick, suffocating, like the walls were closing in on me, and he was still standing there, perfectly still, perfectly silent, watching me with that unreadable smile, as if he was waiting for something. Then, as if the tension wasn't already crushing every nerve in my body, he spoke again. Are you happy with me? His voice was soft, too soft, like he was testing the words on his tongue, figuring out how to shape them in a way that would make me drop my guard. I forced myself to nod. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My throat had locked up, dry and tight, as if speaking the wrong word would trigger something I couldn't undo. He smiled wider. Good. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. Not to the door, not outside, to my bedroom. My stomach dropped. Every single instinct in my body screamed at me to run, to leave, to burn this place to the ground if I had to. But my feet wouldn't move. He walked inside, closed the door behind him, and I just stood there. I don't know how long I stayed frozen like that, staring at my own closed bedroom door, with my heart pounding so loud I swore it was echoing through the walls. But eventually, I forced myself to move. I needed air. I needed to think. I stumbled toward the kitchen, my hand still shaking so badly I could barely pull my phone from my pocket. I dialed 911. Call failed. I tried again. Call failed. My Wi-Fi was gone. My signal was gone. It was like the whole world outside of this apartment had just ceased to exist. And then, just as the panic started to really sink its claws into me, I heard it. A whisper, coming from my bedroom, the first night. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Not when I could hear him. I stayed in the living room, curled up on the couch with a kitchen knife, clutched so tightly in my hand that my knuckles turned white. Every muscle in my body was locked in place, my ears straining against the unnatural silence that stretched through the apartment like a rubber band about to snap. And then, around 2 a.m., I started hearing it. The whispering, low, inhuman, wrong, not gibberish, not some language I couldn't understand. but words. Words I knew. Words that made my skin crawl and my stomach twist into knots, because they were my words. He was whispering things I had said before, not just today, but days ago, weeks, maybe even months. Things I had forgotten, things I had muttered under my breath in frustration, conversations I had never spoken out loud. I clamped my hands over my ears, squeezing my eyes shut. The whispering got louder, and then, at exactly 2:13 a.m., it stopped. I barely had a second to process the sudden silence before tap, tap, tap. I stopped breathing. It was so soft, so slow, so deliberate that I almost thought I'd imagined it. But then it came again. Tap, tap, tap. He was knocking on my bedroom door. I felt my entire body lock up, my fingers digging into the fabric of the couch. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And then I heard him. Let me in. My pulse slammed against my ribs. His voice was different now. Not soft, not curious, hungry. I squeezed my eyes shut, heart hammering against my ribs. The knocking came again, louder, faster. Let me in. It wasn't a request anymore. I covered my mouth with both hands, trying to keep my breath as quiet as possible. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the knocking stopped. The silence that followed was worse. I didn't move. I sat there frozen in place until the first light of dawn started creeping through my window. And then, cautiously, I forced myself to stand. My legs were shaking, my body sore from being tensed up for hours. I swallowed the lump in my throat and took a slow step toward my bedroom. I pressed my ear against the door. Silence. I hesitated, then slowly turned the handle. The door creaked open. The room was empty. The bed was untouched. No signs that anyone had ever been inside. But on my pillow, sitting there like a quiet, mocking message, was a small piece of paper. I picked it up with trembling hands. You're a good liar. Things start changing. I knew, without a doubt, that I couldn't stay here. But where the hell was I supposed to go? How do you run from something that already knows where you live? Something that knows everything about you? But I still tried. I shoved my essentials into a backpack, wallet, phone, charger, a few clothes, and bolted for the door. The moment I turned the handle, I felt it. A presence, not behind me, above me. I turned my head, my breath catching in my throat. He was on the ceiling, not hanging, not clinging, just standing, as if gravity didn't apply to him. His head was tilted at an unnatural angle, his mouth stretched into that same awful, too-wide smile. And his eyes, oh God, his eyes, they weren't blank anymore. They were full of something I don't have words for, something starving. I ran. I don't remember how I got to the hallway, how I stumbled down the stairs, but suddenly I was outside, gasping in the cold night air, my legs still moving, like my life depended on it. I ran for blocks, and then, just as I thought I had put some distance between us, I made the mistake of looking back. He was there, standing beneath a street lamp, smiling. I don't know how long we stood there, locked in that silent, horrible moment, but then he lifted his hand and waved, like a child, saying goodbye to a friend. Then, slowly, deliberately, he pressed a single finger to his lips. Shh! And vanished. I don't remember getting back to my apartment. I don't remember unlocking the door. But when I did, I found something waiting for me. Something that made my knees go weak, made my vision blur with a fresh wave of panic. My bedroom door was wide open, and inside, the bed was made, the floor was clean, and on the pillow, placed neatly in the center, was a single, blood-stained tooth. It wasn't mine. I didn't touch the tooth. I couldn't. It sat there, small and pale, resting perfectly in the center of my pillow. A human tooth, not chipped, not cracked, smooth, fresh. I felt sick. The moment my brain registered what I was looking at, my stomach turned inside out. The bile rose so fast, I barely made it to the sink before I vomited. My entire body was trembling, my legs weak beneath me, but I forced myself to stay upright. This isn't real. This isn't happening. But it was. I could still feel the weight of his presence, not in the room, but in the walls. It was like he had left a stain in the air, something thick and sticky that clung to my skin. I wanted to scrub myself raw, to scrape this feeling out of my bones, but I knew it wouldn't work. He was still here, somewhere, watching. I backed out of the room slowly, keeping my eyes locked on that single blood-stained tooth, as if it would jump up and bite me if I looked away. My breathing was shallow, my pulse a violent drumbeat in my ears. I didn't even realize I was whispering to myself, "This isn't real. This isn't real. This isn't real." Then the closet door creaked open. I ran. I don't even remember grabbing my keys. My body moved before my brain could process it, pure adrenaline taking control. I bolted out of my apartment, down the stairs, into the cold, empty street. I didn't stop running until I was blocks away. The Starbucks incident. I don't know how long I walked, maybe hours, maybe the whole damn night. I just kept moving, my feet carrying me forward, while my mind struggled to not break apart completely. At some point, I ended up at a Starbucks. It was one of those 24-hour locations, bright and artificial, a perfect contrast to the cold horror that had just torn through my life. The normalcy of it made me feel disgusting. People were in there, people drinking their coffees, scrolling on their phones, completely oblivious to the thing that had just ruined my existence. I stood outside for a long time, staring through the glass. Then, against all reason, I went inside. It was warm. Too warm. The air smelled like cinnamon and espresso, but it made me nauseous. I felt like I was contaminating the place just by being there. Like whatever was attached to me was spreading into the air, slithering into the vents, into the people sitting there, minding their business. I ordered a coffee just to feel normal, just to remind myself that I was still part of this world, that I could still function like a person. But when I handed the cashier my card, she frowned. "Sir?" she said hesitantly, flipping the card in her hands. "There's something on this." I blinked, my brain slow to catch up. "What?" She turned it toward me. There was something pressed against the plastic. Something small. Something white. It was another tooth. I dropped the card. The girl startled, stepping back, and my stomach lurched as the tooth rolled off the counter and landed with a soft clink on the floor. "Sir?" The cashier's voice was wary now, her hand hovering over the register like she was ready to press some kind of emergency button. I couldn't move. I just stood there, staring at the tooth. It hadn't been there before. I knew that with every ounce of certainty in my body. It wasn't there when I grabbed my wallet. It wasn't there when I handed over my card. So where the hell had it come from? Then I saw it. The reflection. The Starbucks had those big glass windows, the kind that turn into mirrors when the outside is darker than the inside. And for the first time since entering, I caught sight of myself and him, standing directly behind me, not in the store, in the reflection, smiling. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. My entire body seized, locked in place, my limbs useless. I could feel him. He was breathing against my neck, but only in the reflection. I turned. Nothing. I turned back. Still there, grinning. His mouth was different now. Wrong. Too wide. Too sharp. His teeth didn't belong to a human. I didn't even realize I was moving until I was outside, running, running, running. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. I just needed to get away. The following night, I should have left town. I should have gotten on a plane, a bus, anything. But I didn't, because I knew it wouldn't matter. I could already feel it. I belonged to him now. I don't know when I came back to the apartment. I don't remember unlocking the door, but I remember what was waiting for me. The tooth on my pillow was gone. In its place was something new, something worse. A finger, small, pale, childlike. I recoiled, bile rising in my throat again, but my body refused to move. The stench hit me a second later, that unmistakable smell of rot. I wanted to scream, to rip my hair out, to wake up, but I didn't. Instead, I felt myself reaching for it. My fingers brushed against cold, stiff skin, and then it twitched. A scream finally tore out of me. I stumbled backward, knocking into the dresser, my head spinning, my breath coming out in short, panicked gasps. I was losing my mind. I had to be. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. Then, somewhere in the darkness, a laugh. Low. Software wrong. I whirled around, heart hammering, but the room was empty. The closet door was open again, and from inside it, something whispered. You looked at me. I never should have looked. The second I heard those words, you looked at me. Something inside me shattered. It wasn't just fear. Fear is something you can push through. Fear is what keeps you alert when you hear footsteps behind you in a dark parking lot. What makes your heart race when you're alone in your house and something isn't right. This wasn't fear. This was pure, primal horror. The kind of terror that roots itself in your bones and tells you, you've already lost. I wanted to run. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to get the hell out of that apartment. But I knew it wouldn't make a difference. He had already wormed his way inside my life, inside my mind. And now that I had broken the rules, he was done waiting. The closet door creaked open wider, and I saw him. Not his whole body, just a sliver of him, standing there in the darkness. His skin was pale, too pale, not like a person, but like something that had never been touched by the sun. And his mouth, God, his mouth, it was grinning, wide, unhinged, like his lips weren't meant to stretch that far, like they had been forcibly peeled back to reveal teeth that weren't just sharp, but jagged, splintered, uneven. Some looked too new, others looked too old, and then I realized some of them didn't belong to him. My stomach twisted. The teeth, the ones he'd been leaving for me. Had he been taking them, collecting them? From who? From what? My breath hitched. I took a step back, and he moved, not stepping forward, not crawling, sliding, like a puppet on invisible strings, his head tilting at an impossible angle, his fingers twitching in short, unnatural jerks. And he was grinning, so wide, so impossibly wide. My vision blurred. The room felt too small, the walls pressing in, suffocating me. I tried to move, to scream, but my throat locked up. Then, he whispered. I don't remember the words. I don't think I want to, because the second he spoke them, something changed inside me. Something broke. I don't remember passing out, but I do remember waking up. The missing time. I came to on my kitchen floor. It was morning. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, cutting the room into slices of light and shadow. It should have made me feel safe. It didn't. I sat up slowly, every muscle aching like I'd been fighting something in my sleep. My mouth was dry, my tongue heavy. My head pounded like I was hungover. And then I saw my hands. They were covered in blood. Not wet, not fresh. Drying, flaking, thick under my nails, streaked across my wrists. I scrambled to my feet, my heart hammering against my ribs. What the hell had happened? I turned, searching the room, expecting... What? A body? A message written in blood. But there was nothing. Just my kitchen. Silent. Too silent. I swallowed hard, my pulse thundering in my ears. I staggered toward the sink, flipping the faucet on with shaking fingers. The water ran red at first. It took me a second to realize it was because of me. I scrubbed my hands raw, my mind spinning. The memories were foggy, distant, like trying to grab smoke. I remembered standing in my bedroom, the closet door opening. Then, nothing. My reflection in the kitchen window caught my eye. I looked like a corpse, pale, haggard. My eyes were wrong. The pupils were too large, swallowing the color of my irises. And then, something moved behind me. Number, not behind me, inside the reflection. I whipped around. Nothing. Just the empty kitchen. I turned back to the glass, dread coiling in my gut. He was there, standing just behind my shoulder. Too close. Smiling. I didn't turn this time. I didn't move. I just stared at the reflection, my breath shallow, my fingers digging into the counter. And then, he leaned in. Not in real life. In the glass. His head tilted until his lips were inches from my ear. And he whispered, "I let you borrow me last night." My entire body went ice cold. My knees buckled. I caught myself against the counter, gasping for breath, my vision tunneling. I had to get out. I had to get out. I stumbled toward the door, my fingers fumbling at the lock. It wouldn't turn. Locked from the inside. That's when I saw the footprints. Bloody. Leading from my bedroom, out the door, and then back in. I stopped breathing. Number, no. I had left last night. I had gone somewhere. And then I had come back. But I didn't remember. And worse, I had brought something with me. The phone call. I don't remember how long I sat there. How long I stared at those footprints, my mind unspooling thread by thread. But eventually, my phone buzzed. I jolted violently, every nerve in my body screaming. I pulled it from my pocket, my hand still shaking. Unknown number. My stomach lurched. I shouldn't have answered. But I did. The line clicked. Silence. Then, breathing. Deep. Wrong. And then, "Did you have fun?" I dropped the phone. The voice hadn't come from the speaker. It had come from behind me. I shouldn't have turned around. The second I did, I knew. I had already lost. He was there, standing just a few feet away. Too close, too still, too wrong. But it wasn't just that he was in my apartment. It was how he looked now. He had changed. The boy I had ordered from the dark web, the one who had arrived looking eerily normal, was gone. This thing standing in my living room wasn't human anymore. His limbs were too long, his fingers twitching, his head tilted at an unnatural angle, the bones in his neck shifting slowly as if they were rearranging themselves. His skin had lost any warmth or color. It was almost translucent now, stretched too tightly over something that didn't belong inside a person. His grin was wider than ever, his lips curling so far back that I could see the gums beneath. And his teeth. Oh God, his teeth. They were still wrong, still jagged and mismatched, still not all his. And now, I was sure, they weren't just from other people. Some were mine. My legs gave out. I hit the floor hard, my entire body shaking. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't move. I could only stare at him, at the thing I had invited into my home. His lips moved. No sound came out at first, just the wet clicking of teeth grinding together like he was chewing on something small. Then finally, he spoke. "You let me in." His voice was different now. It wasn't soft anymore. It was layered, like more than one person was speaking at the same time. My chest seized. My pulse thundered in my ears, so loud I could barely hear what he said next. But when I did, when I finally understood, I felt something inside me break. "It's your turn now." The sound from inside me. I don't know if I screamed. I don't know if I even moved. But suddenly, he was in front of me. His knees cracked as he crouched down, pressing his face so close to mine that I could feel his breath against my skin. It was cold, like he wasn't alive at all, like he was something wearing a person's shape, something pretending to be human, but not quite getting it right. I turned my head away, my breath coming in sharp, frantic gasps, but I could still feel him watching me. Number not watching, studying. His fingers twitched. His nails were too long now, too black, too sharp. And then he touched me, just the lightest press of his hand against my chest. It should have felt normal, but it didn't. It felt like something crawling under my skin, like his touch wasn't just on the surface. It was inside me. And then I heard it, a sound, from inside my own body. At first, I thought it was my heartbeat, hammering wildly, desperate to keep me alive. But then I realized it was something else, something moving, something trying to get out. I choked, my hands flying to my throat. I could feel it now, shifting beneath my skin, slithering through my veins like it was alive, like it had been waiting. I gasped, shaking my head frantically, but his fingers just pressed harder. And then he said it again. "It's your turn now." That's when I knew. He was putting something inside me. Or he was taking something out. My vision blurred, the room tilted, and then everything went black. The videos. I woke up somewhere else. At first, I thought I was dead, but then I realized I was still in my apartment. The sun had set. The room was dark, and I was sitting at my desk. The computer screen was on. My webcam light was blinking, recording. I swallowed hard, my throat dry and sore. My body ached. My fingers were stiff. I didn't remember sitting down. I didn't remember turning the camera on. My heart thundered. Slowly, with shaking hands, I reached for the mouse. I clicked on the recording, and I saw myself, just sitting there, still, staring directly into the camera. My face was pale. My eyes were too wide. I wasn't blinking. I wasn't breathing. I wasn't me. The timestamp said the video was 3 hours long. I skipped forward. My body never moved, not even once. But then, at the very end, right before the video cut to black, I smiled. The final rule. I don't remember anything after that. I don't remember how I got back to bed. I don't remember closing my eyes. But at some point, I must have fallen asleep, because when I woke up, there was another note on my pillow. A single sentence, written in my own handwriting. "Never watch yourself sleep." I let the note fall from my hands, and that's when I noticed. The closet door was open again, but this time, there was a mirror inside. and in the reflection, I saw him, smiling. The last message. I don't have much time. I can feel it happening again. The missing time, the blackouts. I can feel something inside me, growing, changing, replacing. I don't know what I brought into this world when I clicked that link. I don't know what I've become, but I do know one thing. If he ever knocks on your door, don't answer, and whatever you do, never look at him when he eats. I bought engagement ring from the dark web as a special gift to my wife, which works as cybersecurity hacker, but the ring started killing people. Alright, so before I even get into this, I need to make one thing clear. I'm not an idiot. I know the dark web is full of messed up stuff. I've watched the documentaries, read the horror stories, and seen enough Reddit threads to know it's not a place you just casually browse for fun. But I also knew my wife. Her name is Sarah, and she's a cybersecurity analyst. She's the type of person who could look at a line of code and instantly tell you if someone's trying to hack your bank account. She always joked that if she ever got bored with her job, she could probably take down an entire underground crime ring just by tracking IP addresses. The kind of woman who could probably break into the Pentagon with a laptop and a Starbucks latte. And I love that about her. So when I started thinking about proposing, I knew I needed something special. Not just some basic engagement ring from Zales or some overpriced Tiffany's nonsense. I wanted something unique, something that actually meant something to her. That's when I made the dumbest decision of my life. I went to the dark web. Now, to be fair, I wasn't looking for anything illegal. I wasn't trying to buy organs or hire a hitman. I had just heard that you could find some crazy, one-of-a-kind items there. Stuff you wouldn't see anywhere else. I figured maybe there were hidden sellers who specialized in custom jewelry, like underground designers who made their pieces using rare or unknown metals. So, I did what any idiot with too much curiosity and not enough common sense would do. I opened up Tor, connected to a VPN, and started browsing hidden marketplaces. Most of it was exactly what you'd expect. Sketchy Bitcoin transactions, vendors selling counterfeit passports, and forums full of people discussing things that made my skin crawl. But after a couple of hours, I finally found what I was looking for. A jewelry shop. It was called Nocturne Atelier, and their stuff was eerie. Everything had this gothic, handcrafted aesthetic, like something you'd find in an abandoned Victorian mansion. But what really caught my eye was a ring called the Black Aurora. The description was simple. A rare, handcrafted engagement ring forged from an unknown metal. Emits an iridescent glow under certain conditions. One of a kind. The pictures were insane. The band was a smooth, matte black, and the stone looked almost like a shifting pool of liquid light, sometimes purple, sometimes green, sometimes deep crimson. I had never seen anything like it. I hesitated for a second, then checked the price. $1,200 in Bitcoin. Not cheap, but honestly, not ridiculous either. If this was some underground luxury designer, I figured it wasn't that different from dropping a couple grand at a high-end jewelry store. I didn't think twice. I made the purchase, and that's where everything started going wrong. At first, the shipping was surprisingly fast for something I expected to be sent from the depths of hell. 4 days later, I got a small black velvet box delivered to my apartment. No return address, no sender info, just my name, written in perfect, sharp handwriting. When I opened it, I swear to God, my breath hitched. The ring was beautiful, way more than I expected. The metal was cool to the touch, almost too cool, and the stone shifted colors under the dim light of my apartment. When I turned it, I could have sworn the colors actually moved inside the gem, like a tiny storm trapped beneath the surface. It was perfect. I was so caught up staring at it that I almost didn't notice the tiny piece of parchment inside the box. There was a single line written on it. Do not wear it before the vow is made. I frowned. Weird, but whatever. Maybe some creepy marketing tactic. Either way, I was hyped. I had the perfect plan to propose. The next night, I took Sarah out to dinner at this fancy rooftop restaurant in downtown Chicago. I had the whole thing set up. Good food, candles, the works. Everything was perfect. Until the waiter dropped dead. The moment it happened, I thought I was imagining things. Sarah and I had just finished our entrees, laughing about something stupid, some inside joke from years ago. The restaurant was one of those high-end rooftop places in downtown Chicago, the kind where they charge you $50 for a plate with more empty space than food. Candles flickered on every table, and jazz music played softly in the background. Everything was perfect. Then, our waiter walked over to refill my water, and he collapsed. No warning, no gasp, no dramatic clutching of the chest. 1 second, he was standing there, pouring water into my glass. The next, he was face down on the table next to us, his arm knocking over a bottle of wine as he hit the ground like a puppet with its strings cut. For a second, I thought it was some kind of prank, like a weird restaurant gimmick. Then I saw his face. His eyes were wide open, bloodshot, pupils blown out. His mouth was open in a frozen scream, his lips turning blue. The veins in his neck bulged as if something inside him had swollen up too fast, like his body had popped from the inside. Sarah was already moving. "Call 911, she yelled, shoving her chair back as she dropped to her knees beside him. Her fingers pressed against his neck, searching for a pulse. I could tell immediately she didn't find one. Other diners were screaming now, standing up, knocking over their drinks. A woman at the next table clapped her hands over her mouth. A man in a suit fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking too much to dial. The restaurant staff rushed over, their faces pale and panicked. Me? I just sat there, staring, because in that moment, something impossible happened. The ring in my pocket, Sarah's engagement ring, burned. I don't mean it got warm. I don't mean it felt hot. I mean I physically felt a searing pain, like a fresh brand being pressed into my thigh. I yelped and jumped up, knocking over my chair. My first instinct was that my phone had overheated. Maybe the battery had short-circuited or something. But when I shoved my hand into my pocket, I realized it was the ring. I pulled it out, nearly dropping it as a white-hot jolt shot up my arm. The moment it left my pocket, the burning stopped. The metal was ice cold again, as if nothing had happened. My hands trembled as I stared at it. The stone shimmered with an unnatural light, swirling between deep crimson and dark violet. And that's when I noticed the waiter's hand. It was pointing at me. No one had touched him. No one had moved his body. And yet, there it was, his stiff, dead fingers stretched toward me, locked in place, as if he had been trying to grab onto something before he died. His face was still frozen in horror, but his eyes, they were looking straight at me. I don't remember much after that. Just chaos. EMTs storming in, the restaurant shutting down, people whispering about a sudden heart attack or seizure. They took the body away, covered in a crisp white sheet. The wine he had spilled was still dripping off the edge of the table, pooling onto the marble floor, mixing with something darker. Sarah and I didn't speak on the way home. She was shaken, probably running through 1,000 possibilities in her head, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I was silent for a different reason, because deep down, I knew the truth. It was the ring. It had to be. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the small black velvet box on my nightstand. At some point, Sarah woke up and rolled over, groggy. "Babe, what's wrong?" I hesitated. Then slowly, I opened the box. She blinked, sat up, and the moment her eyes landed on the ring, something changed. Her breath hitched, her pupils dilated slightly. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but I saw it. "Where did you get that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I swallowed. "Online." She didn't say anything for a long time, just stared at it. Then, without another word, she reached out and touched the stone. The moment her fingers brushed against it, the bedroom light flickered. The TV turned on by itself. Static, loud, overwhelming. Sarah gasped and yanked her hand back. The second she did, everything stopped. The TV powered off. The light stabilized. We sat there in dead silence. Sarah turned to me, her face pale. "Where did you get that?" I could barely get the words out. "Dark web." She exhaled sharply, rubbing her temples. She looked like she was trying to keep herself from losing it. "Jesus Christ, Adam. Do you have any idea how dangerous that is?" I wanted something unique," I stammered. "Something... Do you know how many sites on the deep web sell cursed objects? Do you know how many forums I've read where people talk about..." She stopped herself, shaking her head. "Never mind. Just tell me exactly where you bought it." I grabbed my laptop, still shaking, opened up Tor, logged back into the marketplace. But when I searched for Nocturne Atelier, it wasn't there. Not just the shop. The entire listing was gone, like it had never existed in the first place. Sarah muttered a curse under her breath. "I need to run some checks. Something is seriously wrong with that ring." I nodded, closing the laptop. "Yeah, I think it killed that waiter." She didn't even argue, didn't laugh it off. She just swallowed hard and said, "Yeah, I think so too." That night, I locked the ring in a drawer and told myself I'd figure it out in the morning. Maybe Sarah could trace the transaction, find out who sent it. Maybe I could send it back, refund, or no refund. But then, the second death happened, and this time, it was someone I knew. If you've made it this far, you're probably thinking, "No way, this has to be fake." I wish. But I swear to God, I have proof. I have screenshots. I have Sarah's logs. If people actually want to see them, I'll post them in the next update. But just know, this is only the beginning. Things are about to get so much worse. The second death changed everything, because this time, it wasn't some random waiter. This time, it was my best friend. I barely slept after that night at the restaurant. Sarah stayed up late, trying to track down the seller, but it was like they had been wiped off the face of the internet. No trace of them anywhere. She ran scripts, backtraced IPs, even combed through old caches of the marketplace, but every search led to nothing. It was like Nocturne Atelier had never existed. By morning, I told myself I was being paranoid, that the waiter's death was a coincidence, that I had imagined the burning sensation in my pocket, that the flickering lights, the static, all of it, was just my mind playing tricks on me. And then I got the phone call. It was around 9 a.m. when my phone buzzed. I was in the kitchen, staring blankly at a half-eaten bagel, trying to keep myself from completely losing it. Sarah had already left for work. She had some meet in downtown, so I was alone. I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't have answered, but something in my gut told me to pick up. The second I did, I regretted it, because the first thing I heard was screaming, not like a normal scream, not like someone yelling in anger or pain. It was distorted, almost glitchy, like a phone call from a place where no call should be coming from. A horrible, wet gurgling noise mixed with static, as if someone was drowning while trying to speak. And then, just for a second, I heard a voice I knew. Adam, help. The call cut out. I froze. My entire body went ice cold, because that voice, it was Kyle's. Kyle was my best friend, had been since college. He was the kind of guy who could walk into any room and instantly make everyone laugh. He was a little reckless, yeah, but that's what made him fun. The guy was always up for something stupid. Midnight road trips, sneaking onto rooftops, getting drunk on random weekdays just because. But there was one thing about Kyle that suddenly made my stomach drop. He was the only person who knew about the ring. The night before, after the whole situation with Sarah, I had called him, told him I had gotten Sarah's ring off the dark web, and that I was pretty sure it was cursed. He had laughed it off, called me a dumbass, and said, "Dude, bring it over tomorrow. I want to see this haunted-ass rock." I never got the chance, because Carl was dead. I called him back. No answer. Called again. Straight to voicemail. Something was wrong. I threw on some clothes, grabbed my keys, and got in my car. Carl lived about 15 minutes away, in this old apartment complex near Wicker Park, one of those rundown places that still charged way too much for rent. By the time I pulled into the lot, my hands were slick with sweat. His car was there, parked crooked like always. I ran up to his door and knocked. Nothing. Banged harder. "Kyle, open up, man." Silence. Then, I noticed something. The door was open, not all the way, just slightly ajar. A thin, dark line stretched from the gap in the doorway down to the carpeted hall floor. A liquid. A thick liquid. I swallowed, pushed the door open, and I immediately wished I hadn't. Kyle was sitting on the couch. At least, what was left of him. His head was tilted back against the cushions, his eyes wide open, just like the waiter's had been. His face was frozen in a look of absolute terror, his mouth twisted as if he had died mid-scream. His skin was gray, his lips blue. But that wasn't the worst part. His veins, they were black. Thick, pulsing black veins ran from his fingertips to his throat, twisting up his arms like something had been pumped into his bloodstream. His fingers were curled, stiff, as if his body had seized up just before death. His stomach was bloated, distended unnaturally, like something had swelled up inside him, and on the floor beneath him, a puddle of blood, not just a few drops, a pool, a lake of dark, coagulated liquid that had soaked into the carpet, dripping from his nostrils, his mouth, even his ears. The air was thick with the smell of iron, mixed with something rotting, something wrong. My stomach twisted. I clapped a hand over my mouth, fighting the urge to vomit. Then I saw it, sitting on the coffee table, the black velvet box, my box. The ring was still inside, nestled perfectly in the center of the cushion. The same ring I had locked in my drawer the night before. I took a step back. My heart was hammering so hard, I thought it might burst. I never brought it here. But somehow it was here. I turned and bolted. Didn't check for fingerprints, didn't call the cops, just ran. Because I knew, deep in my gut, I wasn't supposed to be there. I barely remember the drive home. My hands were shaking so badly that I almost crashed twice. My entire body was buzzing with adrenaline, panic, something deeper than fear. I stumbled into my apartment, locked the door behind me, and sank to the floor, trying to catch my breath. That's when my phone rang again. Unknown number. I didn't answer. I just stared at it. It rang, and rang, and rang, until, finally, the voicemail notification popped up. I sat there for a long time before pressing play. There was silence at first. Then, a faint, wet noise. A gurgle. A horrible squelching sound, like something thick moving through flesh. And then, a whisper. A voice that wasn't Kyle's. A voice that wasn't human. You shouldn't have bought the ring, Adam. The call cut out. And then, right then, something in my drawer clicked. The drawer where I had locked the ring the night before. I turned my head slowly. The drawer was open. And the velvet box? It was empty. Okay, so you think this is fake. I don't blame you. I wish it was. But I have proof. Kyle's call logs. The photos I took before I ran. Even the voicemail. I'll post it all. But this isn't even the worst part. Not by a long shot. Because after that night, the ring stopped waiting for me to use it. It started choosing its own victims. I should have destroyed it. I should have thrown it into the lake, buried it, melted it down, done something to get rid of it. But I didn't. Because the truth was, I didn't know how. After Carl's death, I locked myself in my apartment for 2 days. I didn't eat, didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, frozen in terror. Veins blackened like ink had been pumped through his body instead of blood. I saw the way his fingers had curled, the way his mouth was open like he had been screaming for help, but couldn't make a sound. And worst of all, the way the ring had ended up in his apartment. I never brought it there, but it knew. It knew he had asked about it. It knew he had wanted to see it, and it killed him for that. That's when I realized something. I wasn't in control of this thing. It was in control of me. The second night after Kyle's death, I heard footsteps. Not from outside, from inside my apartment. I was in bed, staring at the ceiling, my body numb from exhaustion, but my mind too wired to sleep. That's when I heard it. A slow, deliberate creak of the wooden floorboards just outside my bedroom door. I froze, held my breath, listened. Another step. Creak. I sat up slowly, my pulse hammering in my throat. My bedroom door was shut, but the light from the hallway seeped in through the cracks. A long, thin shadow moved under the doorframe. Someone was standing outside my room. I reached for my phone. 1:47 a.m. I hadn't heard the front door open, hadn't heard my window break, but someone, or something, was inside my apartment. And then, I heard a whisper, not in my head, not through my phone, right outside my door. A voice so soft, it barely existed. A whisper that slithered through the cracks like a breath of cold air. You let it out, Adam. I lunged for my nightstand, and grabbed the baseball bat I kept there. Silence. I stared at the door, every muscle in my body tensed, my ears strained for another sound, another whisper, another step. But there was nothing. And then, the door handle moved. Not violently, not like someone was trying to break in, just a slow, careful turn, like whoever was on the other side was deciding whether or not to open it. That was enough for me. I jumped up and ripped the door open. Nothing. The hallway was empty. The air felt wrong, like the pressure in the apartment had changed, like something had been standing there just a second ago, but had melted away before I could see it. But I felt it, the same way you feel someone staring at you from across a room. I knew I wasn't alone. And then I noticed something. The drawer, the one where I had locked the ring. It was wide open, and inside, resting on the velvet cushion, was the ring, waiting, watching, like it had never moved at all. That's when I made a decision. I grabbed the box, didn't even hesitate. I just grabbed it, shoved it into my pocket, threw on a jacket, and bolted out of the apartment. I wasn't going to let it sit there anymore. I wasn't going to wait for it to choose again. I was going to get rid of it. I drove. I don't even remember where. I just drove, my hands clutching the steering wheel, so tight my knuckles turned white. It was pouring rain, the kind that makes the streetlights blur and turns the whole world into a smear of shadows and neon reflections. At some point, I ended up by the lake. I got out of the car, my heart hammering, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The wind was freezing, whipping through my clothes as I stumbled toward the water. I pulled the ring out, held it over the dark, churning waves, and for a second, I hesitated, because that was the moment it spoke to me, not out loud, not in whispers. It spoke inside my head. If you throw me away, someone else will find me. My fingers locked up. Someone who doesn't know. Someone innocent. A child, maybe. A woman on a morning walk. A man fishing by the shore. My hands started shaking. And they won't know what I am, Adam. They won't understand. But you do. You can stop it. You can keep me safe. I don't know how long I stood there. Rain soaking through my clothes, wind screaming through the trees, the weight of the ring in my palm, heavier than it should have been. And then, I lowered my hand. I put it back in my pocket. I turned around and got in the car, and I drove home, because it was right. If I threw it away, someone else would find it. Someone who wouldn't know what it could do. But I did. I knew. And now, it was my responsibility. The next morning, Sarah came home early from work. She walked in, tossed her keys on the counter, and immediately froze. I was sitting on the couch. The ring box was in front of me, open, staring at me like a black hole. I didn't even look up, just sat there, motionless, exhausted beyond belief. Adam, she said slowly, stepping toward me. Why? Do you still have that? I didn't answer. I didn't know how to answer. She sat down beside me, took a deep breath, and grabbed my hand. We have to destroy it, she said. I shook my head. We have to. I looked at her finally. You don't understand. I tried to get rid of it. It won't let me. Sarah's eyes flickered with something. Fear, maybe, or something worse. But then, she did something I didn't expect. She picked it up. The second her fingers touched the ring, the room shifted. Not physically, not like an earthquake, but the air changed, like the pressure dropped, like the walls breathed, like something woke up. And then, for the first time, I saw it. A shadow. just for a second. Behind her, a tall, impossible shape, with too many limbs, too many twisting, writhing arms. It moved without moving, flickering like a dying light bulb. Its face, if it had a face, just a hole, an empty void, a screaming abyss that made my vision blur just looking at it. Then it was gone. Sarah dropped the ring. Her hands shot to her temples. She let out a sharp, gasping breath, like she had just been electrocuted. Her nose was bleeding, and she looked at me, tears in her eyes, and she whispered, "Adam, we're already dead. If you're reading this, I don't care if you believe me. I just need someone to know what's happening, because I think the ring is done choosing. I think now it just wants to end everything. I wish I could tell you this has a happy ending. I wish I could say Sarah and I found a way to stop it, that we broke the curse, destroyed the ring, and walked away as different people, traumatized, sure, but alive. But I can't, because the truth is, I don't know if I'm still alive at all. I don't even know if I'm writing this. I don't know if any of this is real anymore. All I know is that the ring made its final choice, and it wasn't me. After Sarah dropped the ring that night, something changed. She wouldn't speak, wouldn't eat, wouldn't even look at me. She just sat on the bed, hugging her knees, her face pale and hollow, her eyes locked on something that wasn't there. I kept asking her what she meant, what she saw, what she meant when she said, "We're already dead." But she wouldn't answer. She just kept whispering, over and over, "It's coming. It's coming. It's already here." By the next morning, she was gone. I woke up to the sound of water running. I sat up, groggy, my mouth dry. The apartment was dark, the only light coming from the flickering street lamp outside the window. I glanced at my phone. 3:12 a.m. Sarah wasn't in bed. The bathroom door was open. Steam poured out in thick, curling tendrils, like a living thing crawling through the air. The light inside flickered erratically, casting sharp, jerky shadows against the walls. And I heard something else. A sound beneath the running water. A low, wet gurgle, like someone was trying to speak, but their mouth was full of liquid. I pushed the covers back, swung my legs over the side of the bed. "Sarah?" No answer. Just the running water, the flickering light, the thick, suffocating steam filling the air. I stepped forward, slow, careful. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to turn around, to leave, to run, and never come back. But I couldn't, because this was Sarah, and I had already let the ring take too much from me. I wasn't going to let it take her too. I reached the bathroom door, peered inside, and I felt my mind break. Sarah was standing in front of the mirror, but it wasn't her reflection staring back. The thing in the mirror wasn't human. It was too tall. Its limbs were too long, its fingers stretching like twisting black roots, curling around Sarah's shoulders. Its head was bent at an unnatural angle, like a puppet with broken strings. Its face, if it had one, was just a hole, a black, gaping void that screamed without making a sound. Sarah's lips moved, but it wasn't her voice that came out. It was Kyle's, and the waiters, and dozens of others, all layered on top of each other in a horrible, choking chorus of the dead. "It's your turn now, Adam." The steam thickened, the mirror cracked, the voices screamed, and then Sarah turned to look at me, and she smiled. Her teeth were wrong, too sharp, too many. The moment her eyes met mine, I felt it. A horrible, sickening pull in my chest, a pressure building inside me, pushing against my ribs, against my skin. against the fragile walls of my mind. My vision blurred, the room spun, and the ring, the fucking ring, was in my hand. I didn't even remember picking it up, but it was there, pressed against my palm. The stone pulsed with a deep, hungry light, swirling between black and red, like an open wound. And Sarah, or what was left of her, stepped closer. "Put it on." My body locked up. Every instinct I had was telling me to run, to fight, to do anything but obey. But I couldn't move. I could only watch. Watch as my hand, my own fucking hand, lifted the ring toward my finger. I tried to stop it. I tried to fight, but I was already dead. Just like Sarah said, just like Kyle, just like all of them. We were already dead. We just didn't know it yet. And when the ring slipped onto my finger, I finally understood why. It didn't kill you right away. That wasn't the point. The ring fed. It fed on your fear, on your soul, on everything you were until there was nothing left. It let you live, just long enough to watch it take everyone around you. Your friends, your family, your entire world. And then, when there was nothing left but you, it took that too. I felt my body fold, my ribs caved inward, my chest crushed beneath a weight that wasn't there. My vision tunneled, my mouth opened, but no sound came out. And the last thing I saw was Sarah's reflection, smiling at me from the shattered glass. Then, darkness. I woke up somewhere else, not my apartment, not anywhere I recognized, just blackness, endless, suffocating blackness, stretching in every direction. The air was thick, heavy, pressing against my skin like a second layer of flesh. And in front of me, a mirror, a tall, jagged mirror, cracked down the center, distorting my reflection. But it wasn't my reflection anymore. The thing staring back at me was grinning. Its teeth were too sharp. Its limbs were too long. Its face was mine. But its eyes were the rings, swirling, hungry. And then it stepped out of the mirror, out of me. And I finally understood. The ring had never been an object. It had never been cursed jewelry. It was a door, a gateway, a trap, and I was just the next fool to open it. I don't know how long I've been here. Time doesn't exist in this place. All I know is the ring is gone, and someone else is about to find it. Maybe they already have. Maybe you have. Maybe it's sitting in your house right now. Maybe it's waiting. Because that's what it does. It waits. It watches. And when you let it in, it never lets you go. My brother is a scientist, and he discovered the exact date of the world's end. I just cracked his horrifying dark web chat room and found out way how. Okay, so I have no idea how to even begin this. I've been sitting here, staring at my screen for an hour, trying to find the right words. I know how crazy this is going to sound, but if you stick with me, I promise, I have proof. This isn't just some conspiracy theory. This is real. I wish it wasn't. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Ryan, and I have an older brother, Josh. He's a scientist. Not just any scientist. One of those ultra genius types that skipped grades, got into MIT at 16, and now works for some government-funded research lab. He's never been able to tell me exactly what he does. Every time I asked, he'd just brush it off with some vague answer like, just physics stuff, nothing exciting. Or my personal favorite, if I told you, I'd have to kill you. I always thought he was just being a dick, but now I know he was serious. The first sign. Josh has always been a little off. Not in a psycho way, just paranoid. He never saved passwords in his browser, always covered his webcam with tape, and kept his phone in a Faraday bag when he wasn't using it. I figured it was just him being a tech nerd, but about 3 months ago, I noticed he started acting weird. Like, really weird. He stopped answering my calls. He ignored my texts. When I finally went to his apartment to check on him, he barely let me inside. He looked like absolute hell. Dark circles under his eyes, hands shaking, whispering under his breath, like he was rehearsing some conversation with himself. And then he said something that still haunts me. "Ryan, if anything happens to me, don't trust anyone, especially them." I laughed, thinking he was joking. Them? Like the government? The Illuminati? He just looked at me, his eyes dead serious, and then changed the subject. I should have pushed harder. I should have asked more questions, but I didn't. A week later, Josh disappeared. The disappearance. His apartment was pristine, like too clean. No dirty dishes, no laundry, no signs of life. His phone was left on the counter, wiped completely. No browser history, no saved passwords, not even a single damn text message. It was like he had never existed. The cops were useless. No signs of a struggle, no evidence of foul play. They said, maybe he just wanted to start over somewhere else. Bullshit. Josh wasn't the kind of guy to just leave. So I did the only thing I could think of. I broke into his laptop, the dark web chat room. I don't know a lot about hacking, but I know enough to get by. Josh had a custom-built PC with some crazy encryption, but he had one weakness: me. I knew his security questions. First pet's name, Maximum. Mother's maiden name, Carter. Favorite childhood movie, Blade Runner. Within an hour, I was in. Most of his files were empty, but then I found something buried deep. An application called Oblivion.exe. It looked like a normal chat room, except for one thing. It only had one thread. The thread was titled Project Terminus, Final Stage, and my brother was the last one to send a message. The messages. I clicked on it, and the chat opened up. It was like stepping into a nightmare. User, J Cypher, Josh. Timestamp, 3:47 a.m. We shouldn't be doing this. This isn't just a theory anymore. It's real. I ran the calculations 100 times. The probability is absolute. User, Black Sigma. That's exactly why we have to proceed. The test has already begun. You don't get to back out now. User, J Cypher. You don't understand. I found the exact date, the exact time. This isn't a drill. This isn't some academic exercise. We're talking about the literal end of the world. User, Black Sigma. Then you understand why we can't stop. The order has already been given. All that's left is execution. User, J Cypher. No, I won't let this happen. User, Black Sigma. You don't have a choice. User, system message. J Cypher has left the chat. That was the last message. What the hell did my brother find? I don't know what Project Terminus is. I don't know who the hell Black Sigma is. But I know one thing. My brother figured out when the world is going to end, and someone made him disappear for it. I tried searching for Project Terminus on Google. Nothing. No results. No theories. Not even a whisper about it on conspiracy forums. Like it didn't exist. But then, something weird happened. Not even 10 minutes after I logged into that chat, my phone started going crazy. Unknown number. Text messages with random numbers. My Wi-Fi disconnected on its own, and when I tried to turn it back on, it just said, access restricted. And then, my laptop shut itself down. I turned it back on, and the screen was black except for one message. Stop digging. And then it wiped itself. Every single file, every document, every chat log, gone. But here's the thing. I took pictures of the chat room on my phone, and now I need to figure out what the hell Project Terminus actually is. If anyone knows anything about this, please tell me, because I think I just uncovered something I wasn't supposed to see, and I'm starting to think they know that too. I don't sleep anymore. I can't. Ever since I found that chat, ever since my brother vanished, I've had this feeling, like I'm being watched, like something is waiting. It's not paranoia. I know it's real. I can feel it. This isn't just some deep web conspiracy. This isn't a glitch in the system. This is something much, much worse. And I think I just found out what happens to people who know too much. The stranger in the coffee shop. The day after my laptop got wiped, I went to a Starbucks. I needed Wi-Fi, a public place, and enough people around me that no one could just make me disappear. I sat in the back, opened my phone, and stared at the screenshots of the chat I'd saved. My brother had discovered the exact date and time the world was going to end, and something had stopped him from talking. I was about to upload the screenshots to Reddit, but before I could, I noticed something. A man, sitting 2 tables away. He wasn't drinking anything. He wasn't looking at his phone. He was just watching me. Not in a casual way, not in a curious way, in a way that made my stomach twist like a dying animal. He was bald, wearing a black suit, no tie. His face was wrong, like a wax figure of a person, just slightly off. No facial hair, no wrinkles, just smooth, artificial-looking skin stretched too tightly over his skull. And his eyes. Jesus Christ, his eyes. They weren't normal. They weren't human. There was something hollow about them, like looking into a window that led nowhere. I tried to ignore him. I focused on my phone, pretended to be scrolling Instagram, but the second I looked back up, he was standing right next to me. I didn't even see him move. 1 second, he was sitting 2 tables away. The next, he was looming over me, like a shadow that had decided to take shape. "You need to leave," he said. His voice was flat, empty, like he wasn't talking to me, just pushing the words out into the world. I grabbed my phone and stood up so fast, my chair scraped against the floor. "Excuse me." "You need to leave," he repeated. I turned to the barista. "Hey, do you see this guy?" The barista just stared at me, confused, like there was no one standing there. I turned back around, and he was gone. Just gone, like he'd never been there. The worst part, the screenshots on my phone were gone too. Not deleted, not in my trash folder. Just erased, like they'd never existed. The room that shouldn't exist. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, I've been running, city to city, hotel to hotel. Every time I stay in one place for more than a day, I start seeing them. The bald men, the ones with waxy skin and hollow eyes. They don't always do anything. They just watch. But I think they're getting tired of waiting. Last night, I checked into a cheap motel in New Jersey. It was the kind of place where the front desk clerk doesn't ask questions. The kind of place where the walls are thin and everything smells like cigarette smoke and old carpet. I locked the door, bolted it, shoved a chair under the handle for good measure. Then I tried to sleep. I don't know how long I was out, but I woke up to a noise, a click. like a door unlocking. I sat up, heart hammering. The chair was still under the doorknob. The bolt was still in place. But the closet door, the one I hadn't even touched, was slightly open. Just a crack. I reached for my phone, turned on the flashlight, and shined it at the gap. I should have left. I should have grabbed my keys, sprinted out the door, and never looked back. Because when I shined my light into that closet, there was a door, a second door. It wasn't supposed to be there. It wasn't part of the motel's layout. It was old, made of rotting wood, covered in deep scratches, like something had been trying to get out. And then I heard something on the other side. A whisper. Not a normal whisper. Not like someone talking to themselves. This whisper sounded wrong, garbled, backwards, like a recording being played in reverse. I backed away. My breath was coming in sharp, panicked gasps. And then the door started to open. I didn't wait to see what was inside. I ran. I didn't even stop to grab my stuff. I just bolted out of the room, down the hallway, through the lobby, and into the freezing night air. The motel clerk shouted something after me, but I didn't stop running until I was 6 blocks away. When I finally worked up the courage to go back for my things, my room was empty. Not just of my stuff, of everything. The bed, the TV, the nightstand, all gone. Like the room had never existed. Like I had never existed. The truth about Project Terminus. I'm running out of time. I know that now. They know I'm still digging, but I finally found something. I went back through some of my brother's old emails. Most of them were normal, work stuff, boring academic crap. But then I found one that stood out. It was from an encrypted address. No sender name, no subject, just a single line of text. Project Terminus has begun. The countdown is irreversible. And attached to it, a file. It's a video. I don't know if I should watch it. I don't know if I want to. But if my brother was willing to risk everything to stop this, I need to know the truth. Because whatever Project Terminus is, it's already started. And I think we're all running out of time. I shouldn't have watched it. I should have deleted it the second I saw the file. I should have thrown my phone into the ocean, burned my laptop, vanished off the grid like Josh tried to. But I didn't. I watched the video, and now I think I know why he disappeared. Because something is coming, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. The file. The file was named ntransmission.mp4. No metadata, no timestamp, just an empty file, sitting in my inbox like a loaded gun. I hesitated. My whole body was shaking as I clicked on it. The screen went black. For 5 whole seconds, there was nothing. No sound, no movement, just darkness. Then the video started, and I wish to God it hadn't. The experiment. The first thing I saw was a room. It was small, sterile. One of those government lab setups you see in documentaries. White walls, a metal examination table, cameras in every corner. The kind of place where things happen that no one is supposed to talk about. In the middle of the room, strapped to a chair, was a man. I didn't recognize him. He was young, maybe late 20s, wearing a tattered hospital gown. His arms and legs were bound with thick leather restraints. His head was slumped forward, his breathing ragged. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a voice crackled over an unseen speaker. Subject 9 is conscious. Begin phase 3. A door opened. 2 figures stepped into the frame, both dressed in black hazmat suits. their faces hidden behind tinted visors. They moved with unsettling precision, like they'd done this hundreds of times before. One of them adjusted something on a metal panel attached to the chair. The man, Subject 9, jerked violently. His whole body spasmed, his mouth opening in a silent scream. And then, his skin started peeling away, not burning, not melting, peeling, like an invisible force was unraveling him, stripping away the outer layer of his flesh in long curling ribbons. No blood, no muscle underneath, just nothing, like he was being erased. I felt bile rise in my throat. I wanted to look away, to turn it off, but I couldn't move. I could only watch as the man, or whatever was left of him, began to twitch violently. His mouth moved like he was screaming, but there was no sound. His eyes rolled back, his veins bulged, and then he was gone. Just gone. Nothing left but the chair, still rocking slightly from where his body had been. For a moment, the room was silent. Then the speaker crackled again. Subject 9 has reached completion. Proceed with Subject 10. The video ended. The date of the end. Sat there, staring at my screen, unable to breathe. This wasn't a hoax. This wasn't CGI. This was real. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers slick with sweat. I needed to do something. Anything. I needed to tell someone. But when I checked my inbox again, the file was gone, deleted, like it had never existed. But before it disappeared, I saw one last thing. The timestamp. The video wasn't from last week. It wasn't from last month. It was from 6 years in the future. March 12th, 2030. The exact date of the world's end. The truth about my brother. It wasn't a countdown. It was a scheduled event. Something is coming, and I think my brother figured out how, or worse, why. He didn't just disappear. He was taken, and I think I'm next. Because the moment I closed my laptop, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. I shouldn't have, but I did, and what I heard on the other end made my blood turn to ice. A whisper, slow, garbled, like a voice played in reverse. You saw it. Click. The call ended. I stared at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone, my mind spinning. I don't know where to go. I don't know who to trust. But I know one thing. The end isn't coming. It's already here. And they've already started erasing us. I don't think I exist anymore. I don't mean that in some philosophical, who am I kind of way. I mean it literally. I tried calling my mom today. Her number doesn't work. I checked Facebook. Her profile is gone. Every single message thread we ever had, gone. Our family photos, gone. I even found an old email she sent me years ago. When I clicked on her name, it just said, "User does not exist." It's like my entire family was erased, like they were never real to begin with. And I think I'm next. The disappearance of Ryan Carter. I went to the DMV this morning. I had to know for sure. I waited in line for 2 hours before I got to the counter. The lady at the desk looked exhausted, barely even glanced at me as I handed her my ID. I need to confirm something. My voice was shaking. She sighed and typed something into her computer. Then she frowned, typed again, looked at me for the first time. This ID isn't coming up in our system. I felt my stomach drop. That's impossible. I renewed it last year. She tried again. Then she looked at me, her expression shifting from confusion to something else. Something close to fear. What's your name again? Ryan Carter. She hesitated. Then, without saying another word, she stood up and walked into a back room. I didn't wait for her to come back. I ran. The man with no face. That night, I checked into another motel. It was the kind of place where the sheets smelled like mildew, the lights flickered, and the vending machine only sold expired chips. But I didn't care. I just needed somewhere to be alone. At around 3 a.m., I woke up to a sound, a slow, wet tapping. I turned my head, and my blood turned to ice. There was someone standing outside my window. Not standing, pressing. His forehead was smashed against the glass, his skin pale and clammy. His mouth hung open, his lips cracked and dry. And his hands, Jesus Christ, his hands, they were wrong. Too many fingers, too many joints, bending the wrong way. And his face, there was no face, just smooth, blank skin stretched over a featureless skull, like something that had never been human to begin with. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Then, slowly, it raised a hand and tapped the glass. Tap, 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 like it was testing me, seeing if I was real. I don't remember standing up. I don't remember grabbing my keys. I just remember running. The forgotten town. I don't know how long I drove. Hours, days, maybe. Time stopped making sense. I passed empty gas stations, abandoned houses, entire towns that looked like they hadn't been touched in decades. No people, no cars, just silence. Then, at some point, I realized I hadn't seen another living soul since I left that motel. Not one person, not a cashier, not a cop, not a single goddamn car on the road. It was like the world had forgotten itself, like it was shrinking, like I was driving straight into nothing, the house that wasn't there. I don't remember deciding to stop. I just did. The road ended at a dirt path, and at the end of the path was a house. Not a creepy, run-down shack, not some horror movie cliche. Just a house. Normal. Suburban. But I knew deep in my bones that it shouldn't be there. That I shouldn't be there. The front door was unlocked. Inside, everything was perfect. Spotless. The air smelled like fresh laundry and something else. Something rotten. And then I saw the photos. Framed pictures lined the walls. They were all of me. Me as a child. Me at my high school graduation. Me last Christmas, wearing a stupid sweater my mom bought me. And then, me, standing in the exact spot I was standing in right now, holding my phone, staring at the photo. I turned slowly, my pulse pounding. There was something behind me. Not a person, not a shadow. Something worse. Something that had been waiting. The last thing I remember before everything went black was it whispering my name, the place between reality. I woke up in nothing, not darkness, not light, just emptiness. I wasn't standing, but I wasn't floating either. It felt like I was suspended in a place that shouldn't exist. And then I heard it. A voice. No, all voices, layered on top of each other, speaking in a language that wasn't meant to be heard. They said one thing. The world is already gone. And then I saw it. I saw what my brother had seen. I saw what Project Terminus was trying to stop. I saw what was coming. And it was already here. The end has already happened. I woke up in my car. It was morning. The sun was out. My hands were shaking. But the world was different. The sky looked wrong. The colors were too sharp. The clouds didn't move. There were people now, walking the streets, filling up gas stations, driving cars. But when I looked at their faces, they were empty, like copies, like someone had remade the world but forgot how people were supposed to be. And then my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I opened it. It was a video, a live feed, of me, sitting in my car, reading this message. I dropped my phone. My pulse was hammering in my skull, and then slowly, I looked up and saw myself standing on the sidewalk, watching, smiling. I don't think I made it out. I think the real me is still back there, still trapped in the place between. And whatever is sitting here in this car, writing this right now, it's not me anymore. I can't tell if I'm awake or dreaming. I don't even know if I'm real. Something has gone wrong with reality. And I don't mean some deep, philosophical, what does it mean to exist? Bullshit. I mean something fundamental is broken. Something has rewritten the world. And I don't think I'm supposed to be here. The copy that walked like me. I stayed in my car for an hour, staring at the thing standing on the sidewalk. The thing that looked exactly like me. It just stood there, smiling, not moving, not blinking, just watching. And then, slowly, it waved. I nearly vomited. My hands were shaking so bad, I almost dropped my keys. I jammed them into the ignition, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. The thing that looked like me took a step forward. I slammed my foot on the gas. The tires screeched. My car lurched forward. But as I sped away, I made the mistake of looking in the rearview mirror. And that's when I saw it. The thing that wasn't me was still standing there, but its smile was gone. Now, it was just watching, waiting, like it knew something I didn't, the world that shouldn't exist. I drove for hours. The road stretched endlessly, looping in ways that didn't make sense. And the people, they were wrong. It wasn't just that they didn't blink enough. It wasn't just their blank expressions. It wasn't just the way they moved, stiff, mechanical, like someone wearing human skin, but not understanding how to use it. It was something deeper, something missing. Every time I passed another person, I felt it, like I was driving through a movie set, like I was the only real thing left. And then I started noticing the duplicates. A man in a blue suit, walking down the street. Then, a block later, the same man, same suit, same face, same blank, empty eyes. And then again, standing at a bus stop. And again, walking into a grocery store. Over and over, like the world had run out of people and was just copying the same ones over and over. And then, I saw her. The woman from my high school. The one who sat in the back of the classroom, always chewing her nails. But she hadn't aged. She looked exactly the same, like she had just been dropped here, like she had been saved in the system and pasted back into reality. I tried to talk to her. She didn't respond. She just stood there, staring past me, mouth slightly open, breathing slow, shallow. And then she turned stiffly and walked straight into traffic. The car hit her at full speed. I heard the impact, the crunch of bone, the sickening sound of her body hitting the pavement. But there was no blood, no scream. She just twitched. And then she stood back up. Her arms were bent the wrong way. Her spine was twisted. Her leg was shattered. But she just kept walking, like nothing had happened, like she was a glitch, like the world was trying to fix itself. I ran, the door that should never open. I don't remember how I got back to my brother's apartment. 1 second, I was running. The next, I was there. But the building was different. The paint was peeling, like it had been abandoned for decades. The windows were shattered. The front door was wide open. Inside, everything was covered in dust, except for one thing. A door. At the end of the hallway. Perfect. Pristine. Like it didn't belong. And on it, my name, etched into the wood. I didn't want to open it, but I had to. I don't know why. Something was waiting for me, and it wanted me to see the thing that wears my skin. I opened the door, and there I was, sitting in a chair, staring at me, smiling. It wasn't a mirror. It wasn't a hallucination. It was me. Same clothes, same hair, same scars on my hands from when I fell off my bike when I was 12. But its eyes were hollow, like the world had forgotten to give it a soul. It opened its mouth, and then it spoke. You are not supposed to be here. Its voice was wrong. Too many layers, too many tones, like hundreds of people speaking at once. I took a step back. My mind was screaming, telling me to run, but my feet wouldn't move. The thing that was me stood up, its head tilted slightly. Then it reached into its pocket and pulled out a knife. You are the last one. I felt my chest tighten. We cannot let you leave. Then it lunged, the end that has already happened. I don't remember what happened next, just pain, cold hands grabbing me, a voice whispering, something I couldn't understand. And then, nothing. I woke up in my bed, in my apartment. Everything was normal. My phone was next to me. The sky outside was bright. The people on the street looked real. But I know the truth. This isn't real. None of it is. Because when I looked at my phone, there was a message waiting for me from an unknown number. I opened it. There was only one word, terminus. And then I heard it, a tap, 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 at my window. I turned slowly, and outside, I saw myself, smiling, waiting, and this time, it waved. The last transmission. This will be my last post. I don't have much time. If you're reading this, it's too late. The world has already ended. We just haven't realized it yet. And soon, neither will you.